The MAW, Interior Interrogation Room. It felt more like a closet than a room, if not for the tin chairs and rusty table. A bald man, 40s, slouches in his chair facing the door. His arms are clamped around the back of the chair by two cuffs, conjoined by a visible electric current. The bald man's head hangs low. Bulging veins pop along his temples. Dark bangs droop under his eyes like bruises. Across from him, another man paces in what little room he has. The interrogator, 40s, leers at the bald man with reptilian eyes. The interrogator stops. He plants the heel of his hand on the table, leans in toward the bald man.
Still nothing?
You said it, not me.
The interrogator nods, feigning a smile. He strides around the table until he's adjacent to the bald man's chair. The interrogator pulls the bald man's hands around his body from behind his back to the table in front of him. The bald man yelps in pain as the electrical current passes through his abdomen. He slumps over further. The interrogator grips the man by the jaw, moves the man's cuffed hands further up the table. From a pocket, the interrogator produces a wafer-thin device. When put to the bald man's wrist, thin wires wriggle towards him like legs of an insect. They prod his skin, then sink in like needles. The bald man screams louder the further they dig underneath his skin.
How about now?
The bald man remains tight-lipped as the wire tendrils burrow further and further up his arm.
The old way was better. It got results. And I didn't mind the mess. It got results.
Hey!
The interrogator turns. The bald man clamps a hand on the table, doubled over in pain. The operative, 30. She slams the door open with force and steps inside.
That goes off right now. That's an order.
Without any eagerness, the interrogator dials down the device. The wire tendrils slink back out of the bald man's arm.
You're wasting your time.
And how's that exactly?
Because he's not our guy. He's a clone.
Interior, hallway, outside interrogation room. The operative pulls the interrogator out of the room and around the corner, jostling him against the wall.
What the hell are you talking about?
Test results came back. There's a manufacturing key in his DNA.
So where's the real one?
That's what we're trying to figure out. SIO is investigating his last known location.
You can find a microscopic code on the man's damn DNA, but you can't keep him from getting loose like a stray dog? Whatever. Let me get back in there.
Interrogator, that's not our guy.
He killed the whole planet.
He's a copy. He didn't kill any of those people.
But he remembers it like he did.
The interrogator goes to step around the operative, but she gets right in his path.
Absolutely not. Unless you want to get thrown into a cell next to him. Get back in there and don't say a word to him until SIO gets here. That's an order. Get me?
The interrogator grits his teeth.
Yes, ma'am. That I get.
Interior interrogation room. The interrogator saunters back inside. The bald man, now the clone, sits in the closed chair rather than the one opposite the door where he originally sat. As the interrogator enters, the clone slinks around the table and sits in the other chair. The interrogator sits down in the now open chair.
Why should it matter to me if you're a clone?
The clone tilts his head.
I'm asking you what you think.
I didn't murder those people.
So I've heard. When you close your eyes, what do you see?
The clone's face is flushed.
You may as well be him. I can't look at you without seeing the things you did.
The clone averts his eyes sharply, searching the table.
What do I see? It's like I'm strapped down to a chair and forced to watch his memories over and over. Every time I close my eyes, they replay again and again.
Tears well in his eyes.
I would never do it. Any of it. But how can I even say that or believe it when he did all those things? Who would clone someone like that?
Clone grips the table again, much harder than before.
I've tried to make new memories, trying to remember everything since you all captured me, shipped me in a box, brought me here, and I can't. I can't remember any of it. All I can remember is what he did.
The clone looks up at the interrogator. Now the interrogator averts his eyes.
You know, I wasn't supposed to talk to you anyway. Sorry.
He leans in, puts a hand on one of the clone's cuffed hands, but when he tries to pull away, he can't. He pulls again, and again, harder still. Their flesh is fused, his palm upon the top of the clone's hand like two metals welded together. The interrogator panics, ready to tear his hand away. With every tug, his hand becomes further fused. His body is being absorbed into the clone's hand. The interrogator strains, trying to pull away. Flesh grows from his cheeks, his neck, his chest, all growing and filling his mouth, muffling his screams as they begin. His other arm is pinned against his torso by more flesh and merged so that there's no separation. He wriggles helplessly as bones crunch within. The clone holds the interrogator's gaze for every endless second. The interrogator is stretched and contorted, then crunched and compacted. The last parts of the interrogator vanish into the clone. He stands and sits on the other side of the table. Moments later, the operative flies inside once more, flanked by 2 SIO soldiers clad in heavy-duty armor. They find the clone all by himself. Interior debriefing suite. The operative steps inside without anyone batting an eye. To her right, a stretched oval table. Too many talking heads yapping about it for her liking. Ahead of her, more office workers, a rudimentary desk, a thin screen hanging nearby showing a newscast. Genocidal emperor escapes. The clone is certainly a spitting image. To her left, a long glass window. The clone stands alone within the room on the other side. A few guards stand about next to her.
That's a two-way, right?
The guard nods, but the clone seems to write into the room all the same. The director, 50s, stands among the yapping heads near the table. He quiets them down as they watch footage on a small tablet on the table. Footage shows the clone in the interrogation room. He looks back as if noticing someone come in. The footage then hard cuts. The clone is back in his seat, facing forward.
Sir, here as soon as I could be. What happened to Interrogator?
Facility cameras show him entering cell block C. Never comes out. Cameras cut out when he should be in the interrogation room. What am I looking at exactly?
Looks like he could have made a detour.
I'm sorry?
Well, do we know that Interrogator showed up at...
If I wanted to play games, I have a grandson I can call. The only time the footage cuts or glitches out is when your pal is in the box.
My pal? We've barely spoken.
You interrupted an interrogation.
He was torturing him.
He was taking orders from me.
Sir!
264 million people.
One of the others watching the footage, one of the director's advisors, steps forward.
Everyone was affected by the Emperor's crimes.
How many of them were your daughter?
Watch it.
We can't take our anger out on his clone for what he didn't commit.
And why the hell not? If it was a murder and we ran his DNA, he'd be a match for the killer. But because he's killed 1 million people, it's...
Enough.
Everyone bites their tongue.
We can't let revenge get the best of us. But I can't deny what I'm seeing here. There wasn't any detour. I don't believe the clone isn't involved in his disappearance.
Let SIO investigate. That's what they're here to do anyway. But please, let me talk to him before you do anything else. If I disappear, then you can really be sure.
The director mulls it over.
One talk. That's it. I can't give you anything more. If SIO is already swarming, you're on your own.
Interior, clone cell. The clone sits in the corner of his musky chamber. He's sitting upright in his bed, which is up against the back right corner of the cell. Everything about the cell is old. Even the air is stale. Except, that is, for the cluster of cameras upon the ceiling, all freshly installed. The clone stares right into the lens of the closest camera pointing at him. The cell is save for a distant screaming. Just a single individual. One screaming man. The clone stretches his hands. He can't ignore the growing ringing sound behind him, drilling. A piece of wall pokes out at his lower back, just above the bed.
I know who you are. Let's have a little chat.
How did you know I was here?
Thin walls, but not thin enough to have a clear conversation. Or withstand this tool.
A laser?
Handheld. Smuggled in for me yesterday.
Smuggled onto a prisoner ship?
You'd be surprised how easy it is to get things on and off this bucket. People? Now there's a rat of a different tale.
Right. Can't they see you talking through this hole?
I do crazier things than this all the time. And it's not like they care what happens to me. They probably think I'm persuading the wall to go out with me on a date. If only. All I'm really doing is trying to break out with this tool and your help.
Ah, my help.
You're a maniacal, murderous monster. At least the actual one is. If anyone can help me get off this heap, it's you. We'll use this hole to communicate and to pass things between each other.
The clone can't help but chuckle.
You'd think they wouldn't put someone so close to me they could scheme with me.
Well, it's like that woman was saying, right? You're not the real deal. Only the real you would require that kind of treatment.
The clone takes a deep breath, feels something behind him. The prisoner's fingertips meet the end of the hole on the clone's side.
In lieu of a handshake, keep the hole covered however you can do that. Then meet me back here in an hour. We don't have much time.
You said it, not me.
The clone doesn't move. The prisoner's fingers waver in the hole.
Come on, guy.
The prisoner reels back, then hunches over, intent on peering through the hole himself. He puts his face to the hole. The clone's finger taps the prisoner's forehead. His face is melded with his fingertip. His forehead funnels into the fingertip like sand in an hourglass. Eyes pop and become goo, mixing in with the terrible slurry. His entire face becomes gelatinous. He struggles in vain, unable to tear away. In the clone cell, the cameras watch him as he sits there doing apparently nothing, just a hand behind his back, maybe to support him as he leans up against the wall. He still needs a pillow sent to his cell after all. But there are no cameras in the prisoner's cell. If there were, they'd seen him frantically writhing in the corner.
Almost done.
The prisoner's dissolved head fills the mold of the puncture in the wall, suffocating on his own liquefied flesh through the top of his throat. One moment, he's neck deep in the wall. Then his entire body is squeezed together. The next moment, he's vanished. The clone pulls his hand back out, stretches it all he can. Interior, hallway outside interrogation room. The operative walks through like a plow shearing through ice. She curses under her breath. SIO suits and soldiers are already swarming. Approaching the SIO soldier guarding the door, her face says everything she needs to say. The guard stands aside.
In and out, ma'am.
I'll do the best I can.
She enters the interrogation room, where the clone already sits opposite her, staring at her the moment she steps in. She notices his hands are cuffed, but not behind the chair, and not with an electrical current either.
I'm surprised they don't have you in some sort of full body cast.
The clone smiles.
I'm sure they don't care what happens to you. Besides, they want a good reason to come in here and shoot me anyway.
The operative swallows hard.
Well, with that being said, I plan to do this no matter what, so I came prepared.
There's only so much I can tell you
You
people.
gotta give them something. Anything. If they don't think you're cooperating enough, they'll lock you in here for good. Or, yeah, they'll kill you.
The clone holds the operative's gaze, but not for long. He chews his lip, meets her gaze again, smiles.
Remembering the what, the where, the when, the how, all of that's easy. I can't get it to stop playing in my head.
He pauses.
But the why?
The smile goes away.
The why. That I had to dig deeper for.
All the operative can hear now is the sound of her own breath until clone starts again.
Only when I found the answer, I couldn't believe it.
Only the operative's breathing can be heard, and two distant screams. Two distinct individual screams.
He didn't even know why he was doing it. He had convinced himself, lied to himself, that he was doing the right thing. So much he couldn't believe the truth anymore. Then they told him this was the key, a show of power at the cost of the few for the loyalty of the many. It was just numbers on a chart, words in a plan. All he had to do was say yes.
The operative looks back at the clone, stiff as a board.
He was a coward, a weakling, cattle who couldn't think for himself. Lives thrown away for a shallow political scheme. That's the stuff I'm birthed of.
He flexes his palm, opening and closing, opening and closing, opening and closing, opening and closing, opening, closing.
And you're just the beginning.
What?
Everyone will be asking me why forever. Everyone will always want to know.
His hands dart to hers. The operative jumps away, pulling her hands back in a flash. The clone straightens up, looking surprised.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to.
Please, don't mention it. You've done a lot for me already, sticking your neck out for me to your superiors, and now letting me open up to you. I really owe you one.
The operative smiles and nods with thin lips. A series of bangs at the door make her jump again, but restrains herself the best she can. She slowly gets up, not taking her eyes off the clone for an instant, not until she gets to the door. She knocks with the same pattern. No response. She looks back at clone, begins to breathe heavily. She bangs louder on the door. The clone isn't moving, but he seems to be looming over her just the same, like the walls are closing in. The door finally opens and the operative almost falls through.
Wait, miss.
The operative freezes in her tracks.
I really did mean it. Thank you for lending an ear. I'd like to open up to others on this ship. Maybe they have ears to lend, too.
The SIO guard closes the door on the operative and the clone. She straightens herself out, clears her throat.
Triple security outside his cell and the entirety of cell block C. Immediately.
Interior, cell block C, night shift. Only dim, dirty lights far overhead light the block at this hour. Several SIO guards stand just outside one cell. Other soldiers meander nearby, still others patrolling elsewhere. A few taps at the panels next to other cell doors, reading the informative projections about each prisoner. One patrol group strolls down the hall where they pass by the closed door of an office. Interior, night shift office. The floor hasn't been seen in weeks. The office is riddled with boxes, tablets, devices, books of all kinds. Starlight spills into the office, providing its only light. Below the window, the operative sleeps, curled up on the short couch. Interior, cell block C, night shift. The SIO guards are bored out of their minds, if only for the moment. They hear screams from deep in the block. A few whip out handheld scanners and point them at each path they can find. We see the laser tool pierce the door of clone cell, behind the guard closest to the outside of the cell. Flesh jumps through the hole and pierces his back. His screams are muffled instantly. More bursts out from him and attaches to the closest two guards like roots. They start to get pulled together into horrifying bulbous mass. The sound it makes is vomit-inducing. Others who notice are too late to avoid being pulled in. Interior, night shift office. The operative is sound asleep in the office just as the power goes out. Distant screams echo from outside the office, but then they multiply, louder than ever. Then, gunfire. The operative finally wakes up. An alarm blares, joined by oscillating lights filling the room in deep crimson.
Warning. Cell block C is now running on emergency power. Life support systems are limited.
The operative slides off the couch and toward her desk. She grabs a pistol with a flashlight and another small handheld flashlight, makes for the door with haste. Interior, cell block C, night shift. The operative runs out of the office and towards a majority of the cells. They're as empty as can be. Several rifles litter the floor. No bodies, no blood, no guts, no flesh. Nothing. She scours a bit more, finding several ID cards. One less card for as many guns there are. The overhead lights of the block shine no more, just the red oscillating lights. Though now, in the larger block as opposed to the office, they seem to provide much less light, if any meaningful amount at all. Steps away, she finds clone's cell door, open. There's a hole in the door where the laser was used, a ring still glowing red around the exit wound. Another scream, someone up ahead. Their shadow struggles in the red light. The shadow disappears. The operative finds another route and takes it, but it's a dead end. The door won't budge. Another door slams behind her in the other direction as the ship AI continues its warning. Interior, deeper into cell block C. The operative moves into the hallway. She's approaching the interior debriefing suite. The power is out here too.
Show yourself. Let me help you.
The room on the other side of the two-way glass is pitch black, almost too dark. More screams outside the office behind her, but the operative doesn't jump. She keeps her eyes forward. The desk sits in front of her.
Sir?
The director peeks out with just a blaster in hand. He catches his breath. The operative throws him the small handheld flashlight, which seems to snap him back to it.
You should have this on you, sir.
But it doesn't. The The director makes no attempt to catch the flashlight whatsoever.
We have to kill it.
Sir?
The clone. That thing. We have to kill it before it gets to us.
Sir, what are you talking about?
It traps you. It traps you forever. I don't want to be trapped forever.
Sir? I don't understand.
He's not just a clone. We have to kill it.
Loud banging from outside the office walls deafen them. From every side and all four corners of the room, like they're surrounded. The director moves out from the desk and away from the walls.
If we're dealing with something more serious than I know, sir, then I have to be informed.
The director swivels towards her, gaunt in the face. He grabs her by the shoulders.
We won't die in there. We'll be trapped. We have to kill it.
More banging on the walls. The operative steadies her pistol, training it in every direction. The banging persists at the door, then the wall adjacent. The director backs up, placing his palm flat against the glass. Another hand breaks the darkness on the other side, flattening its palm against his. The director's palm melds with the other, begins to sink into the glass like it's liquid. The operative jumps back in shock. The director fights, but it's useless. The liquid glass begins to crawl up his arm. He screams. The liquid glass pours out of his mouth, out of his eyes and nose. He gargles and coughs on it. The glass begins to constrict him.
Please, kill me! Kill me!
The operative hesitates. The glass fills his eyes, his tear ducts underneath his eyelids. He squints in agony, body gasping, flailing and gargling. The operative squeezes the trigger, one through his head. The body goes limp. The absorption stops. His head hangs low. Liquid glass pours out of the wound. The power comes on, catching the operative by surprise. She stumbles back and then scrambles for the director's desk. She turns on the lights to the other side of the two-way room. Behind the glass, she sees the clone standing on the other side. He smiles at her. Lights begin to flicker. His smile disappears, and then so does he. The power goes out again.
Warning. Emergency power lost. All personnel must exit cell block C immediately.
The banging begins again. The operative nearly bites her tongue off as she tries to keep it together. The door busts open. The operative snaps to the direction of the door, ready to fire. She's doused in scanning white lights. Behind them, a wave of SIO soldiers. They close in on her as she holds her ground. Interior, outside director's office. The operative waits outside the mahogany doors of an office. The interior is much cleaner and sterile. A nearby secretary calls out operative's name. The operative stands up and approaches her desk. She looks out the window. She's within just a small part of a much more massive ship.
That's me. Looking forward to meeting the new director.
Right. The director will see you now.
The operative raises an eyebrow of her own. She steps into interior director's office and finds the back of the director himself. The operative's jaw drops, but she quickly snaps it shut. He's standing in front of his desk, pouring a drink out of a long glass bottle. He keeps his back to the operative.
Nothing like being on a nicer ship, is there?
Sir, she treats me well. This is quite the upgrade, yes. But I know where my home is.
I know about your request to transfer.
The director turns around, but with the face of the clone.
What about making this place your home?
He gestures for her to take a seat. The operative forces herself to move, and does so, but cannot utter even a syllable. The director places a small glass in front of the operative, sips from his, takes a seat in front of her.
5 times your salary, 10 times your bonus, a title that matters.
He extends his hand.
What do you say?
Her eyes are saucers. He leans in closer.
You should take the offer. I insist.
Her hand gravitates into his, and they shake. She shakes and shakes and shakes and shakes. She can't stop. She can't pull away. Her eyes can't pull away from his either. His face changes from his into that of the director's, warping horrendously. She hears distant screams, the interrogator, the cellmate, the guards, the director. His face finally finishes changing back, and he lets go of her hand. She recoils instantly.
I'm sorry. You'll have to excuse me. A few board members have stepped in for the day, and I just can't say no to showing them around. I'll see you around.
He pats her on the shoulder and is on his way. He walks out of the office, immediately schmoozing with the board members waiting out there for him. She moves no more than a statue, clenches her teeth. The hammer of a pistol rings throughout the room. She takes a deep breath, exhales, and gets up. End.